Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Colin Connection. I'm Will, and this is a review episode of the Magpies versus the Cats. It was in front of 83,000 fans on Saturday night, and I'll welcome the Fossil in a second, but it was an absolute catastrophe. Fossil, how are you going down there in Patterson Lakes?
Oh, I've had better days with him and better Saturday nights. I'm telling you, mate, that was absolutely Scheisenhausen. It was probably one of the worst, games we've played for a while. We just got outplayed by a better side, but we'll go into a bit of detail later on about the game, quarter by quarter. But yeah, no, very disappointing, and I'm sure a lot of the Pines fans are in the same boat. So hopefully, they can regroup because we've got a tough one next week against the Swans.
Yeah, exactly. The celebration of Pendlebury, it didn't go as planned, and it really reminded us of the Brisbane game earlier this year or that Hawthorn game last year, which was pretty much unwatchable at stages. And I can't remember a much more frustrating game. The first half maybe against Carlton, but that second half was a horror show, and it just outplayed on every facet by the Cats, and they were well-deserved winners, and the Magpies just didn't turn up in that second half. So we'll start off with that first quarter, Fossil.
Yeah, the first quarter, was played at a pretty quick pace, and Geelong kicked 5-3-33, Collingwood 3-4-22. But I thought the match-ups were interesting. They put Long on to Stewart, which I thought was a big assignment for a young kid, but I suppose that's the way that the young ones have got to learn how to play the game. And I thought he did a very good job on Stewart because he's played 200 games, so he's got a lot more experience than Longy, but I thought he did a very good job. Moore on Cameron did a good job also, and Maynard was keeping Dangerfield fairly quiet. But De Goey was in really good form. I think he had 13 disposals the first quarter. Josh Dacos had 9 disposals and a goal, and Cripps had 11 disposals, and Cameron had two two disposals but 11 hit outs. But yeah, we just seemed to have trouble with him. We just couldn't connect properly like we normally do, and we had good pressure around the ground there for a while, but it was sort of in bits and pieces, and we just couldn't keep it going. And Frampton early had his work cut out against Neil, but I thought he fought back very hard. But yeah, the first quarter was 3-4-22 to 5-3-33 Geelong in front.
Yeah, we really did like that Collingwood connection, Fossil, unfortunately, and in a very high pressure game that you got to take your opportunities, and through the night it got worse from there pretty much. Very high pressure game. Start that second quarter, the ball was going up and back, and the Cats got away with a bit of pressure. It led to a Brad Close goal, and then we had some nice link up play, which I thought from half back to half forward wasn't really the trouble during the night. Like, our defenders were still all right, and transitioning the ball, we had our looks who attacked the center a bit more and hit up Pendlebury and De Goey in the center, these sort of playmakers, Nick Dacos that you want running through there. So we had our opportunities and had some nice link up plays, which led to McStay, who we've got to admit he's been in some fine form. He gets knocked a lot, but he's kicking his 2 goals a week and giving us a forward presence. So at the moment, the team's not going too crash shot, but we have to give McStay some credit there. And it was a real game of chess for a while, scoring from turnover and transition from both sides off half back. And unfortunately, Elliott couldn't finish off the work. We probably should have been in front at half time. Just the dominance we had, especially the first half of that quarter and towards the end, we just couldn't get the score on the board, as was the problem all night. And an opportunity went begging as well. Just another example, Ned Long had it 50 meters out, and he played on really quickly. I think that was to catch the defenders off guard, but I'll blame the forwards. It was Buller and I can't remember the other one was, but they were pretty much beside each other. And the Cats defender, he picked him out and kicked it straight to him. So just that communication and set up all night just seemed to be a problem. So we butchered our opportunities, which is the opposite to last week. And 6 minutes before half time, it was 6-4 to 4-8. We were just, shots going all over the place and not even scoring at times. It's a bit of chaos football, and it was the class of Pendlebury in game 432. We caught the Geelong fella 15 meters out and went back and kicked the goal. That was where our highlight of the night was, and seemed only to get worse from there. But then Geelong just casually, this is what happened. That just, I think, absolutely broke us in the end. They got a quick clearance away, just went straight down and kicked a couple of quick goals, and then all of a sudden we were just behind the eight ball, even a half that we sort of dominated, and seven inside 50s at that stage, and Geelong had five shots on goal, so we were very efficient going forward. And yeah, credit to Shooter. He had a nice big contested win right in the last minute of the first half. So I think it was 1v3 in the middle and almost another opportunity we got up forward. But then unfortunately, Darcy Moore copped a knock. And I think that even though he wasn't having the best game, Darcy Moore was doing his job and keeping Jeremy Cameron very quiet. So, people will knock him, but unfortunately, he's now in HIA protocols and he'll miss that game against Sydney, which is going to be really hard for us to come back from. But anyway, Geelong led at halftime 7-6 48 to 5-8 38.
Well, in the third quarter, William, this was absolutely Scheissenhausen. Geelong kicked 4-4-28 to Collingwood 6 points, but we got within 30. But, when you don't kick a goal in the third quarter, William, and I'll tell you what, out of those six shots, five of those were very gettable. And, if they had kicked two or three, they might have got a bit of momentum into their game, but because they missed all the time, it makes it very hard. And, like you said, Geelong got the ball and the handball through the centre of the ground, and I think they sort of caught our back line out a bit, William. Like we couldn't get the numbers back to help out. It was a lot of one-on-one, and they just seemed to have players running everywhere, and they got the overlap going. And like I said, they kicked 4-4, and we kicked 6 points. So, yeah, it makes it hard. But our kicking inside 50 was very poor. And also, too, I think Geelong do what sort of Collingwood did. They seem to push us to the boundary line a lot, William. And then, you haven't got many options there. You've got to swing it back into the centre of the ground. And, hopefully somebody can mark the ball, which didn't happen. But, that's the way it goes. You got to give credit where it's due. They just outplayed us. But, and in the centre too, we're still getting smashed in the centre clearances, William. We've got to, I don't know what we're going to do there, whether we try and get more pace in there or get a different mix in there or, run the players through a lot quicker. But, when you're getting done with the midfield, like the week before, we got to give our forwards first opportunity, and the week before that, and we were kicking good scores. So I think that's where Geelong beat us. But if you don't score a goal in the third quarter, William, it's very hard to win a football match. And like I said, they got within 30 and a couple of quick goals, and we could have been back in the game. But Geelong were just too strong in that third quarter.
Yeah, no, it wasn't pretty, and the last quarter they just sort of ran away with it. I just wrote some dot points because it was a terrible second half. Yeah, one of the worst halves I've seen in a long time from this club under McRae. But also the start of that third quarter and the start of that fourth quarter, it took Geelong 35 seconds to kick two goals. So when you're trying to get that momentum back and just trying to get yourselves going, it's the worst thing that can happen. And yeah, twice they went straight out of the centre straightforward, just made it look like Oz kick footy. They were just running around and not much pressure. So yeah, the Pies were just not switched on. I think numbers wise, we were pretty close in those contested all those centre clearances and clearances altogether, but it was just the efficiency this week. We were very efficient last week, but just couldn't hit targets. We were missing 15-meter kicks from the centre. One that I think it was Jack Crisp, but he missed Cameron leading up about 60 out and kicked it to his feet and it was turned over. They went down and kicked a goal. There's little things, but I think it was Ned Long as well. He tried to give it off a couple of times, and another time where he should have taken the shot, he actually hit Buller in the pocket and Buller went back and kicked the goal, which was great, but he put him on a hard angle on the boundary line. So just not taking that responsibility, and it seemed like they just didn't want it. So we were just constantly putting ourselves under pressure, and obviously the Cats were just gonna, feast on that as soon as they got the ball forward, and very efficient. And you could say the players dropped their heads. I know they don't like to think like that, and feel like we're being too critical, but it did look at times like the effort just wasn't there. And like I said, that's very rare to see under Craig McRae that the players just weren't just weren't there for the fight. And they were, I think, like I said, we were doing okay getting the ball to 60, 70 out, but the same old problem Collingwood's been having for a while. We need a big key target. I know that Buller's developing. West should definitely play next week against Sydney, and McStay's holding his own, but just a key forward that can crash the pack and take those marks, and he's going to go back and kick most of those goals, most of those shots he has. So it's the little things like that that can just change the game, and we just kept shooting ourselves in the foot. It was very frustrating. 19 scoring shots to 21 at three-quarter time. We had 5 goals, 14, but we led the inside 50s, 45 to 38, which I think just highlights that we're just butchering the ball over the place. And yeah, the Cats were, yeah, it was junk time in the fourth quarter. There wasn't really any fight. They kicked the first 3 goals too, so the game was really blown out from there over 50 points. And then we kicked a couple of goals, Anderson late and a couple of the other guys. But we had 22 inside 50s in a row between our goals, with no goals, sorry, between Pendlebury's goal and that first one we kicked in the fourth quarter. So that just pretty much tells the tale of our efficiency and our shots on goal. And you knew the players were dropping their heads when Patrick Dangerfield's all alone inside 50. It was a relatively crowded defensive 50, and Paddy takes a mark all by himself, and you just look around and go, okay, who's not accountable and who's not doing their jobs. So hopefully this is an aberration, Fossil, but Bro McCreary's late kick a goal that he absolutely shanked. He's coming back from injury, so yeah, it's hard to be too critical of him, but hopefully he's back to that Bo that we know next week, and that pretty much typified the game for us. Geelong running out 18-14, 122 to the Magpies, 9-14, 68, a 9 goal loss, and that probably flattered us in the end, Fossil. So pretty bad to say about a 9 goal loss. And I'm sure there's not many negatives, but you found some negatives for us this week, Fossil.
No, yeah, I got a few weird, but yeah, I just can't believe our field kicking we can change in 3 weeks. Like that last one inside 30, they just I don't know what happened, William. I don't think it was greasy, and Geelong had to play in the same conditions as they were clean, but we just weren't clean at all, and it just makes it so hard, for the forwards. You're putting the ball at the bottom of the feet, or like you said, you're not hitting targets, and they couldn't get any momentum at all. For that many inside 50s. But what we got in return is very poor, and you're wondering, whether they're backing up the ground, whether they're dropping their heads or they're disappointed, but we just couldn't get it. We had two or three chances there in the third quarter. You had to kick four or five, you get the momentum back, but it was just one of those games. So they've just got to put it behind it, William, and, regroup as quickly as they can because they've got another tough one next week against the Swans.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of negatives that you could have chucked in there, Fossil, but I think we'll just try and roll through it. I've got the positives and couldn't highlight many, but like I said, that transition play I thought was okay. It's that last connection inside 50, which we're just lacking. And shoulda, woulda, coulda. If you don't take your opportunities, it's just what it comes down to. But in saying that, these are elite AFL players and they're going to have their bad games, but those simple kicks, it was just Jack Chris 40 meters out, Ned Long 30. I don't think Long's the best kick at times. He doubts himself if he's over 40 meters. So I think that's more above his shoulders than anything. And you could go back and look at a whole heap of them, but we just, start missing. It gets infectious. And even Elliott didn't look comfortable, didn't kick a goal. So, that's he's had that sort of season. He showed some games where he's back to his best, and he definitely wasn't on Saturday night. So you might have to change your goal kicking tip there, Fossil. But anyway, the pat on the
Mm.
back, I'll give us one highlight was Jack Buller. Probably his best game for us. And I saw some really good signs against the Hawks last week, and he did transition that to this week. So that just tells me that he needs to play more senior footy and keep that confidence going. 16 touches, 9 marks, and 2 goals won. So, yeah, growing confidence and 4 marks inside 50. If he can do that, 4 marks inside and get a few shots at goal and hopefully nail them. I think he's a relatively good kick. He had a couple of kicks from, 50 odd meters out. So that was obviously not easy in those conditions, but 2 goals won. So did his role and hopefully he can just keep growing from there. Who's your pat on the back this week?
Yeah, no, I gave mine to Ned Long for his job on Stuart William. I thought till they shifted him later on in the game to get him back into the middle of the ground. But I think, yeah, it was a good learning experience. They put him on those experienced players, the young kids, and they learn a lot. And I thought Ned did a very good job. So I think McRae's doing the right thing. They play a bit in the midfield and they give him a job like that, and then they can learn a lot. But yeah, I was very happy with the job they did on Stuart because he's not an easy player to play on, and it's probably the first time Ned's done that. So I reckon he done himself very proud and done an excellent job on Stuart for his first go at that type of tagging.
Yeah, well, our best defensive forward is Billy Frampton, and we know he can do it in a grand final, but he's playing too well
Mm.
down back. So no, it was something different for Ned, and just on that between Ned Long and Anderson, I know that we're going to have to go with the quicker side next week against Sydney, but I don't think we can have them both in the same side. Anderson's obviously come on really well, and now he's played a few games of footy. The last 2 weeks he's been a bit more quiet, but he did go forward and kick a goal. He played a lot better in the second half. So whether they persist with him or Ned Long, I don't think they should play both of them next week. Maybe the likes of Will Hayes to come back in. So yeah, he's doing a role, Ned, and he did pretty well considering it's something a bit different. We'll get on to our Collingwood Connection Player of the Year votes, Fossil. So my 3-2-1 was De Goey, 30 touches, 9 marks, and he was one of our winners on the night who could find the footy and then break away and help us get going. So probably the best game for a little while for De Goey. Two votes for Pendles, all class, 27 touches, 4 clearances, and that goal. He will have a well rested, a well earned rest next week. Obviously, he just is better with that. And there's going to be critics out there, but I'm not listening to them. He's 38 years old and played the most games ever, so that's got to mean something. And also Jack Crisp as well. The last 2 weeks has probably been his best games of the year, and he's starting to get that run through the middle, and they're chucking him in the center a bit more. He had 4 tackles and 6 clearances with the 28 touches. So no, well done to Crispy. He's starting to find some form now.
Yeah, no, that was a good William. Yeah, well, I was the same. Well, I gave three to go. I thought, for there was probably his best four-quarter game, and if he can stay injury free and he's got that power, which will help us in the midfield. I gave two to Jeremy Howe. I thought he was magnificent down back under the circumstances, and yeah, it was a toughie. But I gave my third one to Crispy. Like you said, William, I think the last couple of weeks he's played well, and I think too. I think they did it a couple of years ago. He sort of played out of the midfield for a while, and then they threw in there, and I think he can come in and pinch hit and give him a bit more, give him a bit of assistance in the middle of the ground. So I gave him the one vote. Pendle's very stiff. William very stiff.
It's all right. I reckon in a couple of weeks' time we might be giving him some votes, hopefully, Fossil. Hopefully it's a nice game, but we'll focus on the Swans before that. Let's not get too carried away. Our season leaderboard, Nick Dacos, of course, on 29 and Houston on 19. Maynard and Pendles shared third on 10. But I guess that highlights that Nick Dacos didn't have his most effective game, even though he was getting the ball, and Houston as well. He was shut down by the Cats, and the Cats really went to work on our, credit to Nathan Buckley there, their defensive coach, but knew that Houston was our main link along with Dacos and, like you said, pushing us towards the boundary line. That's where Collingwood wanted to go last week, and the Hawks let us sort of run through, so it forced us to attack the centre. But maybe that's just what sometimes you have to do, what the opposition gives you, and or you can be proactive and get on top. But yeah, they credit to Geelong, they just played a lot better and found our weaknesses. So well done there. In our game day prediction, guys, so the results were up to $70 now next week against the Swans. Shout out to Rob Bronson. He picked 4 goals and 45 possessions, and he was very stiff, Fossil, because Elliot didn't kick a goal and he was off by 1 goal. So he got the possession
Yeah.
spot on between Pendlebury and Long, and 1 goal, one
Well,
goal
it's not a bad effort. Not a bad effort. He's done well. Well, keep at it. Somebody's going to snag it at some stage, Will.
Yeah, and if they don't, we might have to do some sort of raffle or something, Fossil, or
Yeah,
hopefully if the
yeah.
Pies make it, we might buy a finals ticket and have that up for grabs. I'm sure people will be very keen for that. And yeah, just to finish off, so a few big selection calls ahead, Fossil. The Pendles is going to be rested as planned, and who comes in for Darcy Moore? Do we look at McStay down back or bring in West? Noah Howes also might be in line for a debut, the bigger body, and maybe they all come in. Also, what do you reckon about Hayes and Bobby Hill?
Yeah, I think Bobby needs a few more games. Well, I think he had 6 touches, I think, didn't he, and kicked a goal. I'm not quite sure whether that's right or not, but he probably a couple more weeks yet. Yeah, yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I'd like to see McStay and probably Buller stay up in the forward line, because the Sydney ground is very short. So if we can get it down there quickly, and they can get them one out in the square, or they can spread a little bit and give them a target either side of the goals. But yeah, Howes is interesting because he came as a centre half forward and they've been playing him down back, I think. So maybe on the Sydney, because Sydney got about two or three talls, haven't they? So they'll probably need another one down there to help Frampton out.
Yeah, well, they've got obviously Kerno and Amadi, and it depends what sort of structure they go with. They've also got McLean and Brody Grundy, although he's a ruckman. But I dare say between Cameron and Steen, they might be going down forward or going down back to help us out. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting call on matchups this week. But I reckon that they should just throw caution in the wind and see how it goes. It's going to be a very tough game up there in Sydney, and anyway, we'll get around to that on Thursday night, our preview for that game, everyone. But our last thing, Fossil, just a couple of comments I thought we'd finish off on our last episode. So Hazza said, welcome back, Fossil, in fine form after a week's break. Yeah, he must be like Pendlebury Hazza. He gets better after a week off. And no, he was a bit of sickness, obviously. But one you'll like is TJ's Chompers. He said, buy Dylan a beer, Fossil, and add a laxative. He said, state of the game is in great condition, my ass. So you might like that one.
Yeah, great. Well, yeah, that's great. Who was that from, Will, again?
The name's TJ's Chompers. So yeah.
PJ Choppers. All right. Yeah, well done.
All right, guys. Well, it was a catastrophe, as I said, but hopefully the boys can get back into work and going to be tough against those Swans. But you never know. We looked like this back in that 2022 prelim, and we almost knocked them off. So fingers crossed, Fossil. And until then, guys, have a good week, and we'll touch base on Thursday.
Yeah, you too, Will. Have a good week and take care. And yeah, hopefully we can regroup and have a big one next weekend. Thanks, Will.
As always, go Pies. All right. See you
Go
guys.
Pies. See ya. Bye.